morning everybody, thank you very much for the warm welcome. So I've got a little story to tell you too. And my story starts with a storm. And so this is just a few years ago. There was an enormous storm and it was quite famous and hard hitting for our region because it actually caused quite a few trees at Mount Maunganui to fall down, and they're still there today, right? Sitting out there in the water after they slid down the banks, and there was lots of flooding all over the city as well. So during this storm, I was stuck in a little cabin on the back lawn of my house, and because I'd been kicked out of the house. My second son had just been born, and I had an office in the house, but that was now his bedroom, so I got one of those rented cabins, so we put that on the back lawn. So I was in this cabin for 3 days, and almost 3 nights as well. Every day felt like a night because it was so dark, it was raining all day, it was just black, and I had the lights on, I had my computer there, and I didn't actually have any meetings for those 3 days. So I was stuck in this little cabin, and I was, on the one hand I was so connected to the world, like I still had my email and my phone calls and Skype and all these pieces of technology, but I never felt so lonely. And I kind of came out of that cabin after that storm and realised that I needed to get connected to people. And so I came up with a little list of ideas of what it was just so obvious to me that Tauranga needed. So the 4 ideas were a TEDx event, a startup weekend, a co-working space, and a breakfast club. So I'll just tell you a little bit about each one of those. So the breakfast club, and with all of these ideas, the first thing I did was to wait. I thought, right, it's so obvious, I'll just wait for these things to happen. And then, as you guys know, it didn't happen by itself. So the first thing I did was start my breakfast club. I've been to lots of networking groups before. You guys might have been members of them in today or in the past, Chamber of Commerce events and other kind of networking groups. So there was some elements that I really liked about these groups, but there's some that I didn't. So I decided to start my own group. So we have it every month down at the Dry Dock Cafe on Wharf Street. And this is the way it works. Everybody's welcome, young or old, it doesn't matter what you're into. Most of us, half of us are entrepreneurs or have our own businesses. The other half might be working for somebody in town. And there's always a few people that have just freshly moved over from Auckland and they're wanting to extend their network. And so the way we run the meeting is that every person has 2 minutes to talk, and I tell them, you guys can tell me about something you've done recently that you're really proud of and will help you celebrate, or something that has actually got you a bit disappointed and maybe a bit grumpy, and we'll commiserate with you and give you a hug. Or you can tell us about the future, what your goals and aspirations are, what you're aiming for, and I bet you somebody around the table will be able to have a name for you to talk. You can talk to that person and help you achieve your goals together. So that's the way I do that breakfast club. And so we ran this every week actually for about 3 years. It's been going about 5 years now. Every week for 3 years, and then son number 3 came along and kind of had a bit more demands on my family time, so it's now once a month. So another thing that I did, I was really interested in TED. Have you guys heard of TED.com? Has anyone watched a TED talk, a TED video? So what it is, it's a website called TED.com, and basically every weekday they publish a new talk, a new video. So they can be anywhere between 5 minutes and 15 minutes long each. And why I like them is that it just really exposes me to all sorts of different things about the world. Like, I have particular interests. I might be interested in robotics or biology, and I might not be interested in other kind of topics, but all you have to do is read the headline and see what the talk's about, and you thought, normally I wouldn't be interested in this, but I'll give it a go. And you end up watching a talk from a speaker who has such a depth of knowledge about their topic, and they present it in a really interesting and entertaining way. And it doesn't take too much of your time, so say 15 minutes on average, and they've done a lot of research and they've decided that 15 minutes is actually the best time, best length for a talk. Is there any accountants here? Any lawyers? Oh, that's good news. So imagine going to, say, an accounting conference all day. And even if you're really passionate about accounting, I bet there'll be times during that day where you just get a little bit fatigued. What's amazing about these TED Talks is that it fires different parts of your brain. So you might be learning about biology, and then kind of you're thinking about this, and then you might be learning something about art and culture, and that's exercising a different part of your brain. And you go from talk to talk, and you can be there the whole day, see 15 talks in a single day, and you won't get as fatigued as you would with other types of content. And so I've been watching these TED videos, and I've now watched about 1,400 of these TED videos, pretty much just one a day for like 4 or 5 years. And then I heard that there was a live event here in New Zealand, in Auckland. And I was like, a live event? That's fantastic. So I get to watch live speakers on stage. I'm there. So I went up to that up in Auckland. TEDxAuckland is the name of that event. It happens every year. And been to that like 3 years in a row. And on the 4th year, I drove up first thing in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, to get there on time, by myself in the car, and got all the way to the gate, and there was a long lineup of people getting their name tags, and I realised I'd forgotten my ticket. So I went up to the help desk and said, "Oh, hello, my name's Sheldon, I'm from Tauranga. I left my ticket at home." I said, "Oh, we'll look after you, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. Go and talk to this guy." And I talked to him and he said, "Yes, no problem, I'll look after. Here's a VIP pass." So I put on this VIP pass and walked right down the front row. This is at the RTA Centre. So 2,500 people were there that day, and I sat down in the front row, and I was about 2 metres away from all the speakers for the whole day, and right beside me were some of the speakers that were going to be speaking later that day, and also some of the organisers. So I started talking to them about, "Oh, this is pretty cool. What would it take to run one of these in Tauranga?" And they says, "Yeah, it's easy, you just have to follow these few rules, give me a call anytime, here's my phone number, here's this phone number," and they were just really open to helping me and helping me make this happen for Tauranga. So I came back to Tauranga and went back to that breakfast club, and I told them about my vision for this event for Tauranga. I told them that this city needed this event. It inspires people, it brings us all together, it really opens your mind, it fills your mind with really positive messages. So a lot of the time we might watch the news and read the newspapers, and you might have noticed that a lot of it's very negative. And they do that on purpose because our brains are very receptive to danger and to negative news. And so for me, this was my source of very positive things that make me feel really good about the great work that people are doing in New Zealand. All around the world. And so I told this message to my breakfast club, and I said, "Who's going to help me run this?" Because obviously you can't do this by yourself. And 10 volunteers put their hands up, and that was my very first team. And so from there we started with a small event, just 100-person event for 100 people. That was the maximum you've allowed for a first event. Then the year after that we went up to 500 people, and the year after that we did 1,000 people. And just a couple of weeks ago we had almost that number again at ASB Arena. ASB Arena is the only venue in Tauranga that can handle the numbers of people. So we had whole day, 1,010 people, and 12 speakers live on stage, as well as some of our favourite TED videos. You know, and I've always felt that when you go to an event such as that, what you see on stage is half of the value, and then the other half is the people you're meeting, like before or during the breaks or afterwards. It's about those connections you make as well. So, another event that I saw up in Auckland, another one that I stole from Auckland, seems to be a pattern with me, is called StartUp Weekend. So it was called Auckland StartUp Weekend, and I went along to that event, and this is really quite amazing. This is, what can you do in 54 hours? So what happens is on Friday night, a group of people come together, and in fact, it's happening right now in Tauranga, but I'll get to that in a moment. So a group of people come together on the Friday night, and you might just have a little idea for a business. Some sort of, it might be a piece of software, or it might be a way for neighbours to share garden tools instead of everybody owning their own garden tool. You could share it in that way. And so they bring this little idea written on a piece of paper, and they have 1 minute to tell the whole room what this idea is. 60 seconds to tell the idea. And so when you one after another, all these people with these ideas come up, and so you might have 40 ideas. And then we take a break, and everyone you try and get a team around you. So you say, "Come on, remember my ideas about this? What do you do?" "Okay, good, yeah, you'll be part of this team, come and help me." And then say 10 teams form over that. And then if your idea, you don't get enough support, you go and join somebody else's team, you don't go home. And so you work on this project through the weekend, and you're getting lots of input from experienced business mentors, and you're working towards the Sunday night. So Sunday night at 5 o'clock, that's when you do your presentation. So you've got 5 minutes to do a presentation to the whole room. Lots of guests come in from all in the community, business community, and you do a pitch. And the amount of progress you can make in 54 hours, from that Friday night to the Sunday night, you could have a working prototype, a website, you can have customers, you can have co-founders, and you can have sales. You've already made sales, and investors as well. All that in one weekend. Some people spend years building up a business to that level. So when I saw this in Auckland, I said, I'm going to steal this one too. I'm going to steal this one for Tauranga. So I did the same thing, came back to that breakfast group and said, this is what's happening in Auckland, let's steal this for Tauranga. Who's going to help me? 10 more hands went up, and there was another team that I put together as well. And so, yeah, it just seems to be a pattern with me. I mean, are there any original ideas? Maybe not. Let's just steal the really good ideas that we find and mash them together. The third one is co-working spaces. So, fourth one is co-working spaces. So co-working spaces, has anyone heard of this word before? Co-working? Okay, so it's like a shared office. So imagine even a room like this, and you'll be sharing services. You've got your own desk, you've got your own phone line, you're sharing the internet, but you kind of keep to yourselves. But this is just one step above that. So co-working is where you have particular skills that are quite complementary. Somebody might be a graphic designer, somebody is really good at computers, and somebody is really good at marketing. And so you might be serving your own customers, but you can actually come together and work on projects together as well. So that's what co-working is. And I had a little bit of input into one of the first co-working spaces here in town, and then I moved into a second one just about a week after, and now I'm in one of the third ones at Base Station. So the names of them, it's under the Priority 1 building called Ignition, and then there's Studio 64, and the one I'm in is called Base Station on Durham Street. And so, yeah, it's just amazing. You know those water cooler conversations that you might have in an office situation? That's where you get some really valuable input. You'll be telling people some stories about what you're struggling with or what you're dealing with at the moment, and they'll just drop in one idea, and that sends you off in a different direction. So those kind of interactions happen every day. So that's the kind of 4 things I've had a little bit of input into. And I guess what the lesson was for me was, don't be like me. When you identify something that the city needs, don't wait for it, like I did. You've got to stand up and you've got to make some progress on it yourself. And sometimes it's as simple as getting the vision of the future in your head first, and then you've got to spread that idea with other people, and they'll be attracted to that future as well, and they say, how can I help? So I've done that several times, and I just think it works so well. Let's not complain about what's missing, let's start building it ourselves. And that's another reason why I love Tauranga so much, because it's full of people who think that way. And so just to recap those 3 steps, how do you get something done? It's to form a vision of what the future looks like in your head, then to share that idea with other people, and ask for help. Those are those 3 steps. And there's one more thing that I learned from that storm. It's like the purpose of technology. Sometimes we feel a little bit left behind. I mean, even I do. I try really hard to keep on track of the different software and the different hardware, but I hear from people all the time that they feel like they're falling behind a bit, and it's a real struggle to keep up. Yes, it is a real struggle, but we've got to realise what the purpose of technology is. The purpose is to make it easier for us to get together in person. That's the real purpose. So we can spend all the time on Facebook or any times to technology, but if you can use that to come together in person, that's its real purpose. Right, so part 2, chapter 2. So when I, at the beginning of this year in January, I sat my TEDxTauranga team down. Oh yes, I didn't mention, sorry, Startup Weekend is actually happening this weekend, and completely without me as well. So that's why, I'm really proud of that. And so in January of this year, I sat my TEDxTauranga team down and said, right, here we are, we've had a good Christmas break, we've got 8 months until this event is coming along, but I've got other ideas for the city that I want to get on with. So we can either cancel this year's event, or we can do it next year, or you guys can run it without me. You know what they said? They said, yeah, we'll run it without you. In fact, we've got heaps to talk about, so you can go home now. So I was actually pretty happy about that. I left the room and they got on with it, and I went down to the waterfront, just down the road, right down here, and I had a look over the water and just, first of all, just gave myself permission to do nothing for the whole year. Because it's volunteering your time and things. I'm sure this room is full of volunteers. It can take quite a bit of a toll. On me, it cost me some family time, like in the evenings I'd be going to meetings instead of being with my family, or early morning meetings. And there was a bit of a sacrifice in terms of income as well. So I was running my own business as a marketing advisor, and that meant that I'd have to say no to a few extra clients because I was so busy working on these other projects. And so I said to myself, no guilt. If I do nothing for the whole year, it's okay. I'm giving myself permission to do that. And then I thought, but if I was to do something, what would it be? And that's when I first got interested in how the council operates. So I started a bit of a research project there, and I talked to half of the current councillors and asked them, what is it you guys do? What have you achieved? How does it impact on your family life? What does it take to be a really good councillor? And two main things came from that. They said, we do a lot of reading and we do a lot of meetings. So I started with the reading. I thought, okay, if you do a lot of reading, what kind of documents do you read? So I started reading the long-term plan. Has anyone read the long-term plan? The Tauranga City Council long-term plan. It's 450 pages. So I started reading this, and I couldn't believe how interesting it was. I was getting up at 5:15 every morning. I couldn't wait to find out what was on the next page. I was just loving it. So I had almost 2 hours to read before my little boys needed their porridge for breakfast. And so what I did was I was doing little highlights and stuff along the way, and I wrote a summary on my website. So everything that I learned from the long-term plan, I put it onto my website, and then the feedback started to come back from friends and family and colleagues and acquaintances. They thought, they were saying, we don't have the appetite, we don't have the time to read a 450-page document, but thank you for writing your summary, because now I feel like I've got a bit of a handle on the future of the city, what the plan is. And and it didn't take me long. It only took me 20 minutes to get up to speed with that, so that was really good to hear. The next document was the Smart Growth Plan, and then I read 1,000 pages of strategy documents. The Local Government Act, that was a doozy. 500 pages of legal speak, and then 520 pages of bylaws. And I was sharing all of these documents along the way, and man, some people got pretty wild with some of these bylaws. The one that got the biggest reaction, you might not know this, it's actually under the bylaws. Let's say you go into town and you prepay for a couple of hours parking, or 2 or 3 hours parking, and you actually get back to your car a little bit early. And you think, I've got an hour left, and you see somebody fumbling around with their coins trying to put them in the machine. You say, actually you can have my ticket, leftover ticket, right? Who's done that? People, okay, don't do it again. It's against the bylaw. You can't transfer the ticket. Yeah. So when I was just telling people that, they reacted in the same way. It was like, what? It makes me feel good to help somebody else out. And you're telling me that's not permitted. But basically what a bylaw really is, it's just a list of rules that can be enforced if somebody else complains. So there's another one like with freedom camping, and like down at Ferguson Park. So that the bylaw says there can only be 3 camper vans there at any one time, and they can't be there, you won't believe this, they can't be there on Friday or Saturday nights, which you'd think would be pretty much the prime times. And so the reason behind that might be because that attracts unsavoury characters, and maybe they do vandalism or something like that. But, I mean, imagine the damage to our reputation if somebody, a resident in the population says, yep, I don't want those camper vans there tonight, and they call up an inspector, and the inspector is obligated to go and enforce the bylaw because they were told about it, and they go knock on those windows and say, you guys are out of here. I mean, imagine the damage to our reputation as a tourist destination. So yeah, bylaws are pretty interesting characters. Okay, another big component is I started doing interviews with different city leaders. So I've done 45 interviews, about an hour each, and some of those were over the phone. I interviewed some deputy mayors and some mayors from other cities, and kind of got ideas and stuff from them. One interview that really stood out to me was by a guy called Basil Morrison. Have you heard of Basil Morrison from Pairo? Okay, so he's the ex-mayor from Pairo, right? Or Thames? Yeah, sorry, Thames. Yeah, Thames mayor. And I got talking to him on the phone, and I was telling him about what I was planning and getting some advice from him, and he said, "Oh yeah, I know what you have to do. You have to go door knocking. That's the way to get votes." And I was like, "Door knocking, Basil? I'm in marketing. I can just like craft messages and get them out to the people, and that's the way I'm going to do my campaign. Who's got time to go door knocking?" And so went on and did some more interviews with other people, and came across Annette Brosnan. So she's one of the youngest councillors at Napier. And I was asking her for some advice, and she said, in my ward, I was elected in because I went to every single house in my ward. 4,500 homes in my ward, went to every door. And finally, it kind of hit me. Oh yeah, it is what I want to do. And there was so many benefits. It's like I get to put my finger on the pulse of what people are thinking. That's the major benefit. And so off I started. I set my goal of 4,000 homes and started going out to homes in the beginning of May. And as of yesterday, because I went and visited some more yesterday, I have visited 5,478 homes.
Wonderful. Great.
And so I've met 1,531 people face to face at their homes, and I've left a flyer behind for the rest. So has anyone had a visit from me? Oh, cool. A few people here. And here's one kind of quote that I heard most often, and I ended up using it in my signage around town. "I've lived here 59 years, and you're the only candidate that's ever knocked on my door." I heard that so often. And I often get asked, why are you doing this? Why are you interested in running for council? And it's just a magnificent, complicated puzzle. There's enormous amounts of money involved, there's people involved, there's emotion. People have got their own ideas and opinions, and then there's facts, and then there's research, and then it's a really interesting combination of the past. We've got to learn from the past, we've got to honour the agreements that were made in the past, we're acting in the present, and we're thinking about the future. And it's just so wonderfully complicated and interesting. The more I learn about it, the more I just feel like I have to be a part of it. And I think one of my skills is taking complex issues and making them simple, like I did with those council documents. Cool. Thank you very much, everybody. Cheers.